of Sutler's Fort beyond, or the new city of Sacramento, whichever you pleased. Here our boat journey ended. We disembarked into a welter of confusion. Dust, men, mules, oxen, bales, boxes, barrels, and more dust. Everything was in the open air. Tents were pitched in the open, under the great oaks, anywhere and everywhere. Next, the river, and for perhaps 100 yards from the banks, the canvas structures were arranged in rows along what were evidently intended to be streets. But beyond that, everyone simply squatted where he pleased. We tramped about until we found a clear space, and there dumped down our effects. They were simple enough, and our housekeeping consisted in spreading out our blankets and canvas, and unpacking our frying pan and pots. The entire list of our provisions consisted of pork, flour, salt, tea, coffee, sugar, tobacco, and some spirits. After supper we went out in a body to see what we could find out concerning our way to the mines. We did not even possess a definite idea as to where we wanted to go. In this quest we ran across our first definite discouragement. The place was full of men, and they were all willing to talk. Fully 3/4 were, like ourselves, headed toward the mines, and were consequently full of theoretical advice. The less they actually knew, the more insistent they were that theirs was the only one sure route or locality or method. Of the remainder, probably half were the permanent population of the place, and busily occupied in making what money they could. They were storekeepers, gamblers, wagon owners, saloon keepers, transportation men. Of course, we could quickly have had, from most of these men, very definite and practical advice as to where to go and how to get there, but the advice would most likely have been strongly tempered with self-interest. The rest of those we encountered were on their way back from the mines, and from them we got our first dash of cold water in the face. According to them, the whole gold fable was vastly exaggerated. To be sure, there was gold. No one could deny that. But it occurred very rarely, and in terrible places to get at. One had to put in $10 worth of work to get out $1 worth of dust. And provisions were so high that the cost of living ate up all the profits. Besides, we were much too late. All the good claims had been taken up and worked out by the earliest comers. There was much sickness in the mines, and men were dying like flies. A man was a fool ever to leave home, but a double-dyed fool not to return there as soon as possible. Thus the army of the discouraged. There were so many of them, and they talked so convincingly, that I, for one, felt my golden dream dissipating, and a glance at Johnny's face showed that he was much in the same frame of mind. We were very young, and we had so long been keyed up so high that a reaction was almost inevitable. Yank showed no sign, but chewed his tobacco imperturbably. We continued our inquiries, however, and had soon acquired a mass of varied information. The nearest mines were about 60 miles away. We could get our freight transported that far by the native Californian cargadores at $50 the hundredweight, or we could walk and carry our own goods, or we might buy a horse or so to pack in our belongings. If we wanted to talk to the cargadores, we must visit their camp over toward the south. If we wanted to buy horses, we could do nothing better than to talk to McClellan at Sutler's Fort. $50 a hundred seemed pretty steep for freighting. We would not be able to carry all we owned on our backs. We decided to try to buy the horses. Accordingly, next morning, after a delicious sleep under the open sky, we set out to cover the 3 or 4 miles to Sutler's Fort. This was my first sight of the California country landscape, and I saw it at the most beautiful time of year. The low rolling hills were bright green, against which blended the darker green of the park-like oaks. Over the slopes were washes of color where the wildflowers grew, like bright scarves laid out in the sun. They were of a deep orange, or an equally deep blue, or perhaps of mingled white and purple. Each variety, and there were many of them, seemed to grow by itself, so that their colors were massed. Johnny muttered something about the trailing glory banners of the hills, but whether that was a quotation or just Johnny, I do not know. The air was very warm and grateful, and the sky extraordinarily blue. Broad-pinioned birds wheeled slowly, very high and all about us. On the tips of swaying bushes and in the tops of trees, thousands of golden larks were singing. They were in appearance like our meadow larks back east, but their note was quite different, more joyous and lilting, but with the same liquid quality. We flushed many sparrows of different sorts, and we saw the plumed quail, the gallant, trim little well-groomed gentlemen running rapidly ahead of us, and over it all showered the clear warmth of the sun, like some subtle golden ether, that dissolved and disengaged from the sleeping hills multitudinous hummings of insects, songs of birds, odors of earth, perfumes of flowers. In spite of ourselves, our spirits rose. We forgot our anxious figurings on ways and means, our too concentrated hopes of success, our feverish intent, single-minded desire for gold. Three abreast, we marched forward through the waving, shimmering wild oats, humming once more the strains of the silly little song to which the gold seekers had elected to stride. I'll soon be in the mining camps, and then I'll look around, and when I see the gold that's there, I'll pick it off the ground. I'll scrape the mountains clean, old girl, I'll drain the rivers dry. I'm off to California, Susanna, don't you cry. Even old Yank joined in the chorus, and he had about as much voice as a rusty windmill, and about the same idea of tune as a hog has of war. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me, I'm off to California with my washbowl on my knee. We topped a rise and advanced on Sutter's Fort as though we intended by force of arms to take that historic post. End of chapter 13.